Welcome to Experimental, the science show where men dance with robots and eat on the toilet. Later on, we'll be switching off this man's brain, finding out why this man wants to replace pilots with rat brain cells, and we'll attempt to break a world record by making ice cream in under 18.78 seconds. But first, let's dance. Ah, what grace, what style, what beauty. It can only be ballroom dancing, Experimental's all-time favourite way of moving about to classical music. But like so many things in life, it's not much fun on your own. And when all the ladies are taken, even the great Fred Astaire would be left twiddling his thumbs. Well, thank God we're in Japan, because help is close at hand for those left behind by the pretty girls. Here amidst the beautiful Japanese mountains, robotics experts have rustled up a girl who just can't say no. She's a full-sized waltzing robot with the catchy name of PBDR, or Partner Ballroom Dance Robot. Part Marilyn Monroe, part Mickey Mouse, and just a hint of the Terminator. She's the brainchild of this man, Professor Kazuhiro Kasuge, from the University of Tohoku.
This robot is called Pinky, and this is Blue. They're partner ballroom dance robots. They were designed to waltz with male dance partners. The robot moves with 3 specially designed wheels that allow them to move anywhere on a flat surface. Also, around the waist, there's a force sensor that measures the force applied to the upper arm. Using this sensor, the robot can predict the sort of movements the partner would like to do, allowing them to move with the partner.
Like all dancers, Pinky needs to get in the mood to perform at her best. So we decided to set the ambience with a little light, a little smoke, and of course, a handsome partner. This is Takeda, a research assistant at the university. He had to take dancing lessons to help with the development of the robot, and he's the only man that Pinky moves her gears for. Waltzing involves improvisation around a number of set moves. For the robot to follow Takeda's lead, she has to be able to read subtle cues in his body language. In total, she knows 5 different moves and needs to be able to anticipate and react to each one successfully to waltz convincingly. It's all very clever stuff. But Kasuge has more than just ballroom dancing on his mind. Pinky is a showcase for technology that could help the elderly or less mobile. The same hardware that puts her into a world-time spin goes into this, an intelligent walking frame that puts on the brakes when you want to stand up, and can even sense when you're about to take a tumble.
Robots are the only devices that can interact with our environment. So robots are the final, ultimate systems that can physically assist your life. And it's for that reason we are doing our research.
Unfortunately, Pinky is strictly research, so our lonely hearts can only dream of taking her for a spin. But if she were available, would you be tempted?
Humans and robots are fundamentally different, so it might be good for an experience, but I'd have to think twice if I had to dance with a robot forever.
And who could blame him, especially when there are so many pretty girls left to fight for. In a moment, we're off to the laboratories at the University of London to look behind this chap's eyes. But first, let's go and have lunch with Horace in the test department. When Horace is not in the test department labs or accosting women in the name of science, you'll often find him at his desk, writing articles for learned journals. It's a desk like any other, but pride of place is given to Horace's photo of Dr. Charles Gerber. You see, it was Dr. Gerber's seminal work in 2002 on germ counts in the American office that changed Horace's life, leading him to totally re-evaluate his attitude to hygiene. You see, Dr. Gerber showed us that the filthiest place in the average office was the telephone handset, clocking up a score of around 25,000 bacteria per square inch, which explains why Horace is being so careful.
Hello. Hello.
Next up is the desk, with around 21,000 bacteria per square inch, a lot worse than the keyboard and the mouse, which have a population of between 3,300 and 1,700 bacteria per square inch. All of this makes the office a pretty dirty place, which is why when it comes to lunch, Horace likes to have it in the cleanest place in the office. That's right, the toilet seat, which on average has only 49 bacteria per square inch, 400 times cleaner than the desktop. Still to come from the test department, our answer to that vexing question. Will I get wetter if I run or walk in the rain? And our world record attempt. Can we make edible ice cream in less than 20 seconds?
Hello.
We spend 9 days a year doing it. We do it at home, in the office, and even out in public. It's usually over very quickly. And no, it's not sex. It's blinking. Not the subject of cutting-edge scientific research, you might think. Well, you'd be wrong. Believe it or not, no one knows why we blink, but don't notice it. Well, no one knew until this woman came along. Davina Bristow from the Department of Neurology at University College London. She's finally managed to shed light on the mystery.
What we found was that each time you blink, the visual parts of your brain are actually suppressed.
Blinking is like switching on the eye's windscreen wipers. The eyelids wiping away the gunk and grit that would otherwise obscure our view. That, scientists knew. It's why we don't notice ourselves blinking that was the puzzle.
It's actually quite a big interruption to our visual input, because every time you blink, you're basically turning the lights off for about 140 milliseconds, which, if you actually did turn the lights off, would be really, really obvious and you would notice it. And yet somehow this happens every 5 seconds and we don't notice it. And so we're wondering, how is it that we don't notice our blinks and what's going on in the brain?
Davina and her team set out to discover why humans aren't disturbed by these mini blackouts. This is Ian, our volunteer blinker. He's an average guy. Like most of us, he blinks 10 to 15 times a minute. And each blink lasts between 100 to 150 milliseconds. To find out what goes on in his head, other than girls and football, Davina put him in an MRI scanner.
There we go. So just shuffle up a little bit.
Once lying down on a pricey bit of brain probing kit, Davina had to devise a way of seeing if Ian's brain reacted differently if he blinked with the lights on. And that's what this light on a stick is all about. The idea is to stuff it in Ian's mouth so it lights up his eyes from the back. That means when he blinks, the light levels in the eyes will remain the same. Now all we have to do is see what goes on inside his brain. And the results were astonishing.
What we found was that parts of our visual system appear to be sort of shut down or suppressed while we're blinking.
The bits of Ian's grey stuff that turn off are all to do with the visual system. The effect of them turning off means not that things go black, but we're simply not aware that there's been any change from the moment the eyes begin to close to the moment they open again. The eyes close for nearly 1 day a month, 9 days a year. That's around 2 years in a lifetime spent in this semi-conscious state. You might feel a bit annoyed that you're missing so much, but put your mind at ease. You see, this is what you'd see if your brain did not switch off as you blinked. And when you consider we blink 20,000 times a day, it would probably drive us mad.
So, you know, we might ask, what's the point of this? Why do we not want to notice our blinks? Well, if you imagine turning the lights off every 5 seconds for your entire life, that would be incredibly disruptive to your, just everything.
So it seems the old saying is true. Blink, and you really do miss it. Still to come on Experimental, flying rats, erupting water, smashing bananas, and why women love chocolate.
Don't try this at home.
But first, question. Can anyone be bothered to go out and get some milk from the shop in the rain? Nah. But if you were one of our test department demonstrators, the question would have been slightly different. Who will get wetter? The one who runs to the shop or the one who walks? Will the slower one get more on the head but less on the chest, while the fast one will be in the rain less but get a wet tummy? To solve this universal dilemma, we built this device, called the Precipitation Monitor 3000, also known as some sprinklers and a few bits of wood. So here's the experiment. First up, walking through the rain. And here's the result. Using their Moisture Analyzer 3000 machine, the test department found that Horace absorbed 250 millilitres of rain. Now let's see what happens to Horace when he runs through our machine. Go on, fast as you can, lad. After 10 minutes in the moisture analyzer, we find that when running, Horace absorbed only 180 millilitres. Scientific proof, if you need it, that running through the rain keeps you drier. Now, what about that milk? In a moment, we'll be flying high with rat bits and having fun with microwaves. But first, let's cool off.
Hello.
Welcome to the ice cream capital of the world. No, not Italy, Bristol, in the west of England. Because when it comes to making ice cream, physicist Peter Barham from Bristol University has it licked. He scooped the world record for making a litre of ice cream in the shortest possible time. And it's all thanks to one very special ingredient: liquid nitrogen. 18.78 seconds. How cool is that? According to the scientists, ice cream is a mixture of 3 states of matter: solids, liquids, and gas.
The solid is the ice crystals and the fat particles, which also crystalline. Liquid is some of the sugar, which is dissolved in water. A very, very thick mixture, a bit like golden syrup, only much, much, much thicker. And of course, the air, which is the air bubbles, and that makes the gas. So 3 phases all mixed together, and the way in which they mix together makes good ice cream or bad ice cream. So the key ingredients of ice cream are cream, funnily enough, which has got fat particles suspended in water with a bit of sugar dissolved in the water as well. And then a bit more sugar, because we need extra sugar to make it work properly. And that's basically all ice cream mixture is, although you can add flavouring and you can add nuts and chocolate and things, but they don't really have any effect on the physics of ice cream.
The key to making good ice cream is to keep the ice crystals small so you don't notice them in your mouth. And that's where the liquid nitrogen, at an amazing minus 196 degrees Celsius, comes in.
What it would do is make my ice form very quickly, very, very, very small crystals. Which you can see it's gone really cold now, and I've got my ice cream. My ice cream actually has gone so cold that it's actually too cold to eat now, but it'll warm up again to make good ice cream in a minute.
But liquid nitrogen's not just good for making ice cream. If you're mad enough to play with something that can freeze you in seconds, you can have all sorts of fun.
Liquid nitrogen is really, really cold, 196 degrees below 0 Celsius. I'll show you. If you put a banana in there, that boils the nitrogen away. Put some wood over here, and I'll get a nail a moment, and I can take my banana out now, it's cooled down, and we now have actually a split banana, a banana split, very quick way of making one, and I can take my nail and I can try and hammer it with a banana. And 2 things will happen, either it will go in, or I will end up with breaking the banana in pieces. But and the banana eventually falls apart as a hammer. But that's how cold liquid nitrogen is. You can make a banana into a hammer.
Enough of the DIY. What does this liquid nitrogen ice cream actually taste like? Will it bring Dr. Barham Knickerbocker glory, or just an icy stare?
Liquid nitrogen ice cream, sir?
Yes, it's official. Dr. Barham's nitrogen-powered ice cream is not only the fastest in the world, but 5 out of 5 of his own physics students agree it also tastes pretty cool. If ice cream's not your thing, then how about chocolate? Here's a question. Why does this and this have the same effect on one of these? The answer is that both men and chocolate give her that loving feeling. Let's forget about the man. What is it about a piece of chocolate that's such a turn-on for the ladies? The answer lies deep within its metabolic structure, an interesting chemical called phenylethylamine. You may not have heard of it, but it's very important in making you feel good, in that loving kind of way. That's why nibbling on a lump of chocolate can trick you into thinking you're nibbling on something else. Before we finish on experimental, we'll be looking into the future of aviation. 25,000 rat brain cells in a pink dish. But first, let's do dangerous things at the test department. There's nothing a test department tester likes more than a heap of sugar in a cup of tea. The perfect way to kick off a day at the lab. But welcome to Hell's Kitchen. Imagine if you woke up to a cup of tea that did this. So what was that all about? Well, you've probably been told that water boils and turns to steam at 100 degrees Celsius. And in your kettle, that's pretty much what happens. Boiling occurs when a liquid, water, turns into a gas, steam. But in order for this change to happen, the water not only has to reach 100 degrees centigrade, but it also has to have some tiny impurities within it, such as a grain of dirt, around which the steam can form. So if your kettle is super clean and your water is super pure, then there is nothing around which the steam bubbles can form. You can then create superheated water, water that's liquid at over 100 degrees centigrade. The key is to use a microwave. It heats quickly without disturbing the liquid.
Do not try this at home. It's completely irresponsible and very dangerous.
Taking the professor seriously and donning the correct safety equipment, our test department tester can now take out our superheated water. Looks pretty normal, doesn't it? But add some sugar, effectively an impurity around which the steam can form, and the results are pretty explosive. Now that's what I call a quick cuppa. If you've got an X and Y chromosome, with the resultant hairy chest, it's a pretty good bet that you've fancied yourself at the controls of one of these things. And it's a pretty safe bet that the closest you'll ever get is a computer and a CD-ROM. However, that's a lot closer than most rats get, unless they live here at the University of Florida. You see, it's this little chap and his mates, or rather cells from their brain, that are in charge of flying this simulator. It's all the work of Dr. DeMaas, a neuroscientist who's interested not only in how the neurons in brains work, but in finding out ways of making them work for us.
The basic goal of this experiment was to study ways that you could interface a neural culture, a living neural culture, to a device, an airplane, and have it learn to fly.
What Dr. DeMaas has done is got the neurons in this dish to think. That's right, no one has told them how to fly a plane. They've worked it out by themselves. So how do you make a rat brain pilot?
We take a little bit of tissue from the rat's cortex. So if you think of a brain, you have the wrinkly portion of your brain. We take a little bit of that tissue and we digest it with an enzyme to essentially give us the individual neurons separated into a liquid.
This brain soup, literally 25,000 individual unconnected neurons, is placed on top of a matrix of 60 electrodes. Dr. DeMaas now has the beginnings of a brain that's ready to teach itself to fly. All he has to do is plug the matrix into his computer and set the program off. Almost immediately, the individual neurons begin to form a complex network, the beginnings of a thinking brain. What's happening is that the cells are receiving signals from the computer and sending their own signals back to the computer. If they send the wrong signals, then this happens. But with time, the neurons manage to form a network that will react correctly to the incoming signals and so keep the plane in the air.
Ooh, I can fly!
In fact, this mini brain can get so good that it can negotiate mountain ranges and thunderstorms like the best Top Guns around.
I think the most enjoyable part about that particular experiment was the fact that you could take a collection of neurons who didn't know how to do anything and then provide inputs so that over time it could learn to do something. Right? So in the end, you can take one of these networks, plug it into the system, right, and it can fly. It can fly the plane.
You'll be pleased to know that Dr. DeMaas isn't proposing that the next generation of Boeings are piloted by a dish of rat brain. But what this pink rat cyborg is doing is to help lift the lid on the way the brain learns at a cellular level. So perhaps in the future, when a real pilot does this and gets a dunk on the head, we may have a better idea of how to fix him up and get him flying again.
Welcome to Experimental.
A science show that adds chips to fish, poisons the general public,
Sorry, I gotta spit it out.
then takes on White Van Man and wins. Later on, we'll be making a noise in the library, racing a guinea fowl, and taking a deep breath before suddenly trusting this man. But first, let's go swimming. Britons eat over 283 million portions of fish and chips a year. They're the largest consumers of fish and chips in the world. And those battered morsels are one of the reasons that attracted Washeng Hu to his current job as Professor of Computer Science at the University of Essex.
Can I have a fish and chips, please? One, yeah.
In fact, he loves fish and chips so much, he's developed a fish with built-in chips.
Another chips.
You can find it at the London Aquarium, among the schooling herring, butterfly fish and brown sharks. It's one of the world's first robotic fish. Not only does it look and swim like a fish, but like the real thing, it can sense its environment, allowing it to behave totally autonomously. On the inside, though, it's not so fishy.
As you can see, this is our prototype robotic fish.
The fish's sensors are connected to computers inside the head that process their signals. 4 main joints here simulate real fish movement, and these sensors on the face help the fish avoid obstacles. There's also a chamber for pitch and buoyancy control. But for all the technology, Doctor Who is most proud of the fact that
There's sunglasses on our robotic fish.
they don't do much, but Doctor Who thinks the sunglasses make the fish look more like people. Designing and building a robot fish took Doctor Who and his team 3 years. But why go to so much trouble? The secret is in the swim. As you may have noticed, it's something fish can do quite well. In fact, they use only a fraction of the energy that would be used by a conventional propeller-driven ship. So if we learn to replicate the fish movement mechanically, we could end up with far more economical ships and submarines. At the moment, the robo-fish goes belly up after 5 hours, when its batteries go flat. But in the future, Doctor Who hopes to make robot fish that will float to the surface and recharge themselves using solar energy. These could then be used as fully autonomous submarines, surveying pipelines, or even operating as spies. Whatever happens, there is one place they probably won't end up: on Doctor Who's plate.
Hello.
In a moment, tango in the library with loudspeakers for one. But first, let's see what's cooking in the test department. Taste. Is it all to do with your tongue, or do those other senses, sight, smell, and touch, have anything to do with the pleasure of eating? To find out, this tasty dish is going to fry up a bit of dead chicken, pig, and cow. First, she'll check time and cooking temperature, like any good scientist should. Now, she'll get rid of one of the sensations that makes for a great meal, texture, by sticking all that meat in the liquidizer to create a nice smooth paste. So how do we deal with the other elements of a great munch, smell and looks? Like this. The question is that when the only sense that's active is taste, will your average punter be able to tell the difference between pork, beef and chicken? Let's see.
I don't know, I can't taste a thing.
Pork.
Chicken.
Okay, that's beef.
Pork.
So, if you cannot see it, smell it, or feel its texture, all fried flesh seems to taste the same.
Hard to tell.
But what about some vegetarian options? A beetroot, an apple, and an onion. Let's get whizzing and testing. First up, the beetroot and apple.
I've absolutely no idea.
Those are apples again.
I'd say banana.
So the results there seem to be the same as for the meat. But what about the onion?
I just ate a mouthful of onion.
Whoa, onions. Onion? Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I gotta spit it out.
So it seems that of all our foodstuffs,
Disgusting.
only the onion has a taste distinctive enough to be recognised by the tongue alone.
Is that onion?
Coming later on Experimental, why jam jars can beat the strongest hunk.
No, can't do it.
How one sniff from this man could make you give away a fortune, and can Horace beat White Van Man over 30 yards. But first, let's make our own private racket in the library. Experimental has come to the quiet seclusion of Wayland Public Library in Massachusetts to meet this man, Dr. Joseph Pompey, who's got a thing about annoying people with sound.
Hey, you. Ma'am, please wake up. No sleeping in the library.
Most people of his age don't know much about sound. The most antisocial they can get is turning their car's hi-fi up in a quiet neighbourhood. But Dr. Pompey has studied sound for so long he's got letters after his name, and he came up with something a bit better.
That's not a speaker system. Now this is a speaker system.
The whole idea of his sound spotlight system is to make sure that only one person can hear him, even though they're 20 metres away.
Hey, you there. You on the laptop. Are you downloading illegal files to the library network? I hope not. Hey, you there, studying. Miss, can you hear me? I think it's time for a break. Hey, you. Looking at CDs. We're watching.
Taking the mickey out of innocent readers might seem a bit childish, but there's a reason why Dr. Pompey comes here to test his kit.
A library is about the most sensitive area you can think of for background noise and generating sound that people don't want to hear. But with the audio spotlight, we can deliver sound specifically directly to people within the library without bothering the other people that are reading quietly. One of the things is we can bring in a couple of Latin dancers, send them some hot salsa music. They can dance all they like in the middle of the library to all the music that they want without bothering the other people nearby who want to sit, read, or work quietly.
The system works like this. First, your voice is transformed into high-frequency ultrasound, sound so high no one can hear it. Ultrasound is highly directional, so, like a torch, it can be pointed at someone standing a long way away. Although they cannot hear the ultrasound, it causes secondary vibrations in the air around them, and it's that sound the person hears.
So if you imagine you're in a room and I shine a flashlight at you, it's very bright for you, but it's very dark for everybody else. Much the same way, the audio spotlight creates a very narrow beam of sound that you can shine at a listener. They hear it very clearly, and it doesn't create noise that might bother other people in the same space.
It's already being used in museums, and soon Dr. Pompey hopes he'll have his system in TV sets, so that only one person in the room can hear it. The others can get on with something much more boring. But whatever its practical use is, it remains a great toy.
Hey, excuse me, miss. That's a really nice shirt you got on.
In a moment, trust that comes in a bottle, birds on the treadmill, and the ultimate race on the test department track. But before that, what to wear if you're over-endowed in the posterior department. Meet Gloria. She has a problem. She's concerned that her gluteus maximus muscles are overdeveloped, which is a brain box way of saying she's worried she has a big bum. So worried, in fact, that she spent the last 2 hours wondering which of these 3 pairs of trousers she should put on. Luckily, Horace, her boyfriend, has been doing some research. He's convinced that the vertical stripes on those trousers will make her bum look bigger. And indeed they do. So what about the nice white ones? No, these two seem to accentuate the bulge somewhat. Horace has an idea. He's noticed that the bum looks big because of all the shadows falling on the white cloth. So perhaps wearing a dark pair of trousers will make the shadows hard to see and will make Gloria's bum look smaller.
Nice.
And yes, it does.
Horace, you're so clever.
Until you see the profile. Which is faster, man or machine? Can our pie-eating demonstrator beat the wheezing test department science wagon over 30 metres? Let's see. Whilst the last-minute adjustments are being made, here's the hypothesis. That's science speak for stab in the dark. We believe that whilst our van can hit 90 kilometres per hour down long hills, our demonstrator should still be able to win over a short distance. In a sprint race, it's all about acceleration. Even though he's fueled by half a dozen pies a day, our demonstrator should still be able to get up to his top speed in a couple of seconds, whilst the van can only reach its top speed on a very good day. So, let's put our theory to the test. It looks like we're ready for the ultimate man versus machine race. So there you have it. Pie Man is indeed faster than a machine. But only over 30 yards. The smug git. In our next visit to the test department, we'll be out on the streets testing jam jars. But first, let's check out that whiff coming from California. Experimental has come to Claremont Graduate University, possibly the most trusting campus in the USA.
Go ahead, take it. I trust you.
And why are perfectly rational students prepared to laden strangers' hands with greenbacks? Well, perhaps it's to do with this man, Dr. Paul Zak, and his little sprayer of clear liquid.
This vial contains oxytocin. You might call it trust in a bottle. Trust me.
If Dr. Zak is right, a good dose of oxytocin is likely to make you far more trusting, even of total strangers. It's a neurochemical, one of hundreds made in your brain which influence your mood. Oxytocin is released when we feel good, like when we're with someone we like a lot and end up, well, we can't show you that bit, but you get the drift.
It's because oxytocin is active in areas in the brain that are associated with social behaviors, and it decreases the anxiety we have of interacting with strangers.
And to prove that we can trust him, Dr. Zak put on a little demonstration of the powers of his bottled trust.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
He took a number of strangers and squirted either oxytocin or plain old salt water up their nose.
5, breathe.
Once the dribblings had been dealt with, it was time to start the experiment.
The substance you just inhaled is either oxytocin, which is a natural hormone that your body makes, or salty water. You do not know which one of these substances you've been given today. What we want to do is to look at how oxytocin affects the way you make decisions, in particular decisions involving other people and money. What we're going to have you do in just a minute is to log on to the computer and you'll be matched with someone else in the room and you will make decisions by computer with real money that we're going to pay to you today. So here we go. They're going to start making decisions. And we should see several subjects pop up who are on oxytocin, who are showing lots of trust, and other subjects who are going to be less trusting.
The game works like this. Everyone has been given $10. The computer then gives them the option of giving some of that money away to one of the other participants. And this is where the trust comes in. No one knows who they're giving their money to. All they know is that if they give, say, $8 to person X, that $8 is going to be tripled, and person X will get 24. All the giver can do is trust that the person they've given to will split the profits with them, so they will both end up richer. But there's nothing to stop the receiver taking all the money and returning nothing.
Experimental economists think that the transfer from the first mover to the second mover is a sign of trust. The only reason you would actually take money out of the account, your account that you've earned, and give it to another person is because you're saying to them, hey, the pie just got 3 times bigger, and I trust, I believe, I hope that you're going to understand what you're supposed to do with this. You're supposed to share it with me, but you don't have to, and you can't communicate with them. So what we find is about 80% of first movers, in fact, send some amount of money to the second person, and of people who receive a monetary transfer denoting trust, an intentional transfer, about 90% return money back to the first person.
Give people a squirt of oxytocin, and they're far more likely to trust total strangers with their money.
So what we find is that when we give subjects oxytocin intranasally, that it increases their average level of trust by 17%. But more importantly, it more than doubles the number of people who give all their money to another person in the trust game. They keep zero for themselves and give all their money to a stranger.
The oxytocin receptors are buried deep within the oldest parts of the brain, the parts that developed long before any of the true thinking parts, which is why our sense of trust is often subconscious. But it doesn't seem to work on everyone. Monitoring the volunteers, Dr. Zach can see that there is someone who, even though they've had a good whack of oxytocin, is far from trusting.
For now, we just know that most people, when you help them out, their brain releases oxytocin and they reciprocate. Other people, like the person here, is a bastard. Right? So we have one person here who's kind of playing like a bastard. They send a lot of money. Generally, their brains release a high amount of oxytocin, but they're keeping all the money. And this is a person that you don't want to have coffee with or beer. You do something nice for them, and they kind of take advantage of you. So that's not very nice. So we see about 2% of the people kind of hardwired for this, and we're now investigating why they might be doing that. What's happening in their brains that lead them not to want to reciprocate, where 98% of people, in fact, behave according to what your brain's telling you. Hey, someone helped you? Help them out. Be nice. Reciprocate.
But what about the rest of us? Oxytocin might have been shown to have no effect on 1 or 2 people, but what about the other 98%? A gang's going to be running around in the streets, squirting us with oxytocin and asking for our money?
I think it's difficult for that to happen for 2 reasons. One is that we have to put a large amount up your nose to actually get an effect, about 2 teaspoons full, so you'd know you're getting it. And second, the effect is very mild. So we do find people who are given oxytocin who are not trusting at all. They keep all the money. So there are interactive effects in the areas of the brain in which oxytocin is active that modulate its effects. So it's more effective in some people, less effective in others. If I really want to manipulate you, I could use other psychoactive medications that are much more dramatic.
What is good about these experiments is Dr. Zach has shown not just which chemical affects trusting behaviour in others, but also that most of the time, most of us are trusting anyway. Untrusting types are few and far between. Still to come on Experimental, the mystery of how we run fast. But first, to the test department for the answer to a sticky problem. Meet the world's greatest test of human strength. The humble jam jar. Don't believe us? Well, let's see if this chap can open one. Nope.
No, can't do it.
Well, what about this big boy? Not quite man enough? Madam? Oh, come on.
You glued it on!
Why is it that a simple jar of jam can cause so many problems when it comes to getting it open? The answer is that when jam is put into the jar, it's hot. As the jam cools, both it and the little bit of air at the top contract, causing a partial vacuum, which is what holds the lid on so tight. To show just how strong a vacuum really is, let's suck the air out of these two hemispheres with our trusty vacuum cleaner. Go on, lads, you can do it! Oh, no, you can't. And just to prove that it was no more than a vacuum that was holding the spheres together, let's let the air back in. Oops. So if you come face to face with a killer jam jar, use the test department's top tip. Make a tiny hole in the top to release the vacuum, and bingo, problem solved. Walking. Man has been doing it for at least 4 million years. And let's face it, it looks pretty simple, doesn't it? Put one leg in front of the other, again and again and again, and you're walking. Do it a bit faster and put a little jump in the middle, and it's called running. But amazingly, till recently, the science of what's going on inside the muscles of the leg was pretty hazy. Something that annoyed Richard Marsh, biology professor at Boston's Northeastern University.
We don't completely understand the energetics and mechanics of walking and running in any animal or in humans.
Okay, well here's what we do know. Key to a walk, or a run, is how the muscles at the front and the back of the leg move it backwards and forwards. Most people assumed that the muscle at the front didn't really do much work. After all it had to do was swing the leg forward, which the argument meant it hardly used any energy at all. That's what everyone believed, but no one was really sure. To find out, Professor Marsh turned to these little creatures. Guinea fowl. But why a bird?
They're the only other group of animals other than humans to run on two legs.
Now, the sharper amongst you might be saying, "Oi! Birds' legs are different from ours, their knees bend a different way." If that is the case, then stop shouting fast, because your eyes deceive you.
Yes, it seems that way when you look at a bird running, because what you're actually seeing is the ankle and not the knee. The knee is hidden by the feathers, and in reality, the leg design is quite similar to that of a human.
Now that we've cleared up that little anatomical oddity, let's continue with the science. What can you learn from a bird that's so tough to learn from a human?
But the difficulty has been figuring out how much energy the muscles use. And what I realize is that the amount of blood flow to a muscle is directly proportional to the amount of energy that muscle is using.
To monitor the blood flow, Professor Marsh put the guinea fowl on a treadmill and twiddled the knob until the bird was going nowhere as fast as he could go. Just in case the bird decided it didn't want to run, Professor Marsh installed a safety backup.
I'm here to make sure the bird doesn't fall off the treadmill, so that if he comes off the back, I can catch him.
Endurance trained the birds so that they can run at this speed for a half an hour, which is pretty impressive. I don't think I could do that.
Having run the equivalent of a birdie marathon or two, Professor Marsh can get the vital blood samples he needs to analyse just how much work the two important muscles are doing. The answer, that extends to humans, means a bit of a rerun takes place.
Our experiments clearly showed that 25% of the energy is actually used to move the limb while it's off the ground, which is a bit of a surprise.
In other words, the muscle on the front of the leg that pulls it forward is far more important to good performance than had always been thought. What that means for the likes of you is not much. But when it comes to training a great athlete, like the test department's Horace here, then putting a bit more effort into training the muscles at the front of the leg could mean he'll be able to beat Ferraris in future. Welcome to Experimental, the science show that tortures redheads, drinks too much, and revels in the science of falling cats. Later on, we'll be making the world's most boring experiment fun and asking Tango here to write her name.
Get this piece of chalk and write your name. Come on, Tango, write your name.
But first, let's be nasty to redheads. This is Dr. Jeffrey Mogul. See, it says so on the door. And he studies redheads. That's redhead mice and redhead humans. Why? Because he wants to find out how they react to pain. Which is fair enough, as he's the E.P. Taylor Professor of Pain Studies at McGill University.
It is definitely not the case that I woke up one day and said, boy, I wonder if hair color has anything to do with pain.
Professor Mogul's interest in redheads started with these little chaps, red-headed mice. His team was studying the mice's sensitivity to a pain-killing drug, and his research for the gene responsible led him to a chromosome called mouse chromosome 8, which contains a gene which causes red hair. Not only did the gene make for ginger mice, but it made for mice that appear to feel less pain than their white or brown relatives. Amazingly, the mouse redhead gene is exactly the same gene as the one that causes gingers in the human population.
We tested the redhead mice for pain sensitivity on a bunch of different tests of pain in the mouse. We found that in every test, the red-headed mice were less sensitive to pain than the controls, and then we predicted that therefore human redheads should be less sensitive to pain than blondes and brunettes.
To try and find out, he enlisted the help of his colleagues to carry out extra research. But what is pain, and why is it useful? The answer is simple. Without pain, nothing would stop you doing this. But with pain, no thinking is involved. It's just an instant response to get you out of danger.
Pain is an important warning function. Obviously, if you sprain your ankle or break your leg, the pain is there to punish you if you try to move, right? Because your leg would rather you stay still for a few days, and so it can heal properly.
But how can you prove that redheads really do feel less pain than blondes or brunettes? Well, you hurt them, of course. Take a redhead and a non-redhead, make sure they know exactly what they're getting themselves into.
This is John. He's going to be a witness just to prove that I didn't force you to sign the consent forms. Okay, so if you're ready.
And as soon as they've signed up, you strap them down and burn them.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to apply this thermode to your forearm, and the temperature is going to rise. I'd like you to push the button when pain becomes intolerable, so you can no longer tolerate the heat. Okay. Okay, here we go.
Like that wasn't enough, here comes a pressure test. By gripping a handle whilst her upper arm is squeezed by a blood pressure cuff, it impairs the circulation and that hurts.
I don't think I can go for much longer. Okay, easy. Okay, it hurts. Okay, great, thank you.
The results prove that redheads really did feel less pain than their mousy blonde friends. But why? When the body is hurt, the brain produces powerful pain-killing chemicals called endorphins. But, just to make sure you feel pain enough to learn your lesson, the brain reduces the effect of endorphin. However, it seems that the redhead brain, with its altered gene, doesn't reduce the endorphins. So redheads feel less pain. But before all you redhead men go out and test your newfound mouse gene pain tolerance in some immature scrap, be warned. If the big blonde bloke decides to split your head in two, you'll be dead, whether you felt it or not. In a moment, a great film that just might make you want to... But first, let's go testing in the test department. How strong is an egg? Well, it depends which way you try and break it. Squeeze it across the way and it's not very strong. But squeeze it end to end and the human hand can't crack it. So let's see how strong an egg really is in a kind of scientific way with our revolutionary Egg Tester 3000 machine. On the left, a crossways crush, and on the right, we're going to do it end to end. Well, at 2 kilos, things are fine. But oh, it's a splat on the sideways egg at 3 kilos. But how much longer can we go with the end-to-end crush? Fantastic! 9 kilos and we're still stacking. Why? Well, end on, the egg works exactly the same way as a dough, with all the force being sent downwards through the line of the roof. This makes it one of the strongest shapes in nature. But even the strongest shape cannot beat the Egg Tester 3000 machine. And our end-to-end egg goes splat at 10 kilos. Coming later on Experimental, we find out why popcorn pops, why some horses are left-handed, and we meet the inventor of the beer mat that keeps you drinking. But first, let's see if you can watch this without yawning. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, full of carriers. Carriers of the most contagious thing in the world.
Ebola.
The cold. Avian flu. A yawn.
Yes. Yawning. It's one of the most contagious things in the world. How do we know? Well, it's partly because of this man's research, Dr. Stephen Playtech, Drexel University's Yawn King.
Contagious yawning is a phenomenon that is very well known. If you talk to somebody on the street about contagious yawning, they've heard of this phenomenon. And what we've discovered is that between 40 and 60% of people who view, hear, read about, write about, or listen to somebody yawn actually experience the feeling of having a yawn themselves, automatically, without thought.
That's right. It's not just watching someone close to you yawning that sets you off. It's just as effective when it comes out of the television or even the radio. Amazingly, even reading about someone yawning is enough to set some people off. But why?
The reason why we yawn in the first place is unknown. In fact, no one really knows why yawns exist.
Until about 20 years ago, it was thought that yawning was a way of getting more oxygen into the blood when CO2 levels became too high. Indeed, the contagious effect of yawning was put down to there being a general drop in the oxygen level of a stuffy room. So everyone needed a good yawn to top themselves up. It sounded good until scientists discovered that there was no relationship between yawning and oxygen levels. And that's the way it remains today. Well, we may not know why we yawn in the first place, but Dr. Playtech and his team think they've gone quite a way towards discovering why yawning catches. Using what is quite possibly the most boring experimental setup ever devised. Dr. Playtech had test subjects sit in the psychological test room and watch half-hour videos of people yawning. Mind you, he didn't exactly have an exciting time either. He had to wait behind a one-way mirror and count the number of times each of his subjects yawned. After exhausting research, he found out that yawning is more contagious for some people than others.
People who score higher on theory of mind or experience more empathy than other individuals tended to be more susceptible to the contagious yawning effect, meaning that if they were more empathic, they tended to show more contagious yawning.
Theory of mind is what psychologists call the ability to put yourself in someone else's place, to empathize with their point of view, to mentally become them, and as a result, take on some of their traits. Which is why if they yawn, so will you.
I expect that people watching this show, 60% of them will yawn at least once during this program, and then some of those will even yawn more, 4, 5, 6, 7 times even. Those are probably the highly empathic individuals that are watching the program.
Other studies have shown that contagious yawning is a learnt response. Children under the age of 5 don't yawn when shown videotapes of other people yawning. And children younger than about 6 will not yawn when reading about yawning.
Contagious yawning may be a primitive mechanism or a primitive process related to empathy or social behavior and social learning among group-living animals.
In other words, contagious yawning is really about synchronizing your mind with someone else's. So don't be insulted next time someone yawns in your face. They're not telling you you're boring. They're telling you that they empathize with you and understand your point of view. In a moment, Experimental goes to the races in Ireland and to a bar in Germany. But before all that excitement, a rather sombre piece on feline mortality. Experimental would like to present some reassuring work for cat owners living in high-rise buildings, carried out by eminent New York vets W.O. Whitney and C.J. Mellor. They looked at the mortality rates of cats who have fallen between 2 and 32 stories. First, the good news, 90% survived. But there was something odd. The most likely floor from which a cat would suffer serious injury or death was not the 32nd floor, but the 7th. And the reason, the authors speculate, is this. As a cat accelerates, it stiffens up. It takes a drop of around 7 stories for the cat to reach its terminal velocity of around 100 kilometers per hour. Whereupon, the cat stops accelerating, feels no force acting upon it, and relaxes, increasing its surface area and flexibility. And hence, the area over which the deceleration provided by the ground is dissipated. Another one lives. Result, more cats live with longer drops. Still to come, the self-ordering beer mat. And a day at the races. First, let's eat at the test department. When his stomach rumbles, there's only one food a test department tester will eat: popcorn. But with a planet-sized brain, the day had to come when the tester would wonder not how fast he can eat it, but what makes popcorn pop. In other words, how does it turn from this into this? For the average punter, the answer, cooking in oil, might suffice. But not in the test department. We want to know exactly why they're flying out of the pan. So we got out the 1,000 frames per second camera. But even that hardly caught the moment. But look at it frame by frame and you'll begin to see what's happening. First, the kernel expands. This is because the water inside the kernel has reached 200 degrees Celsius and has turned to steam. That steam then cooks the starch, which expands in 3/1000ths of a second, splits the kernel, and puffs up into those little white clouds we love so much. So there you have it. Popcorn at 1,000 frames a second. Before we end, there'll be tennis in the test department. Talking fridges in Germany.
I have ordered some more milk.
But first, lefty racehorses. Apart from a certain black beer, the Irish are probably most famous for their horses. Sales of racehorses alone have topped £100 million in the past few years, and Irish horses won no less than 30 of the world's top races. But why is that? Well, there's lots of reasons, but Experimental has travelled to Limerick to check out just one.
This is, I think, going right-handed.
No.
Huh?
Oh, I think he's a left-handed horse, and that's it.
He's won 3 races on right-handed tracks, and that's it. I'm sticking by my opinion, whatever you want to do.
That's right. There's a strong belief amongst racegoers that horses are either left or right-handed, footed or hoofed. A fact that could give them the edge on some courses. But is it true? One man who thinks it is researcher Jack Murphy of the University of Limerick.
It's well known for a long time by trainers and riders in particular that some horses tend to perform better while galloping on what we call, or working on what we call, the left or the right canter lead. They tend to prefer working to the left or the right.
Jack's problem is taking this racecourse tale and turning it into scientific fact. And that's when he encountered his first hurdle.
All right then, Tango, here's the piece of chalk. Write your name.
Yet horses can neither write their name or pick up the chalk. However, Jack realised that the simple observational test that worked so well with humans was a key to determining the handedness or hoofness of horses.
Well, typically what we did, we devised the experiments around almost everyday occurrences, things that the horses might do almost every day, so that we would see what preferences the horses demonstrated. The first was watching the horse starting to walk. Did the horse initiate walk with either the left or the right front leg? So the second test then was conducted in an alleyway, along which in the middle of was an obstacle, where they had to go either to the left-hand side or the right-hand side of the obstacle to exit the alleyway. Another issue was when the horse got down to roll. Very often after exercise, horses get down to roll, and when they get down, they would roll either to the left or to the right.
After studying the preferences of hundreds of horses, there was no doubt that some were indeed left hoofers, while others trotted to the right. Apart from perhaps giving punters the edge at the bookies, the real benefit of Jack's research comes in training horses, particularly show jumpers, who need to be as happy jumping from the left as to the right. Knowing that a horse has a bias to one side or another means that trainers can devise exercises to compensate, producing a horse that is, to use the lingo, straight. Having checked out hundreds of horses for their left and right-handedness, Jack realised there may be another indicator to that bias, quite literally staring him in the face.
What we looked at were the facial hair whirls. And as you can see here on this horse, on Tango, Tango here has a clockwise facial hair whirl. And this is a female horse, and this mare, when we tested her, was very much right-sided. On the other hand, when you look at Calentra, this male horse here, this horse here has a counterclockwise facial hair whirl, and when we tested that horse was very left-sided.
It seems that hair walls develop in the fetus around the same time as the brain. Get a counterclockwise wall, and there's a strong probability that the horse will be left-handed. Interestingly, a left or right-handed wall indicated another trait.
We found that male horses typically tended to be more left-sided, and conversely, the female horses tended to be more right-sided.
But there is still one question not answered by Experimental's trip to Limerick. Should you call a horse left-handed or left-hoofed?
Well, the technical term for left-handedness is sinistrality. Sinistral is left-hand, dextral is right-handed. But in horses, of course, we talk about left-sided or right-sided.
I think we'll stick with calling you a left-hoofer. Finally on Experimental, the beer mat that thinks. But first, let's play some tennis at the test department. They're playing table tennis down at the test department. But it's not a contest. This is a scientific investigation. They're trying to work out why Billy Bunter cannot hit the ball. Is it his eyesight? Well, no. Perhaps a larger racket would help. or maybe even a ball. Nope, not even that. It seems that the cause of Billy's inability to win a point is far more fundamental. Time for some physical measurements. According to the latest theories, Billy Bunter's reactions can be divided into two parts. First, there's a physical side, the time it takes for the signals to get from Billy's eyes to his brain. Then from his brain to his arms. These signals travel at around 120 meters per second. So in Billy's case, it takes approximately 13 milliseconds for the muscles to get the message. Those times are pretty much fixed for everybody. What makes Billy so bad at hitting the ball is the time he takes to think about what to do. Top players can work out the speed and direction of a ball earlier and with less information than it takes the average player, or even slow ones like Billy. To end with, let's meet Robert Durr, a truly great scientist based in Germany. He knew he was a whiz kid, but what he needed was a great idea to focus his whiz on. He tried the bath technique, where Archimedes had his eureka moment, but no. He stood under a lot of apple trees for that Newton moment, but it was the wrong season. But then he's into embedded technology, not botany, so we can't blame him for his arboreal ignorance. But then it happened. He had his moment, and it was in a bar. From now on, his whiz would be focused on how to get beer into his glass in the most technically efficient way. Robert works in a computer lab at the University of Saarland, where they work on embedded technology, the idea of making everyday things intelligent. Imagine a house door that can recognize you and let you in when you return home. A fridge that knows the use-by date of all the food you put into it.
I have ordered some more milk.
A coffee machine that switches itself on when it hears you coming. A plant that tells you when it needs watering. Or a sofa that recognises your bum and switches on your favourite TV programme. Pretty cool, huh? Well, how about a wardrobe that listens to the weather forecasts?
Today it will be raining.
That is the wonder of embedded technology. But how does Robert hope it's going to revolutionise the world of beer drinking? Well, it's all in the beer mat.
The weight of the full glass is conveyed via a traditional beer mat to a metal plate. Built-in electronics measure the weight and transmit the data to a receiver, which activates a signal indicating where the empty glasses are.
The idea is that the mat monitors the level of the drinker's glass, sends a signal back to the bar staff, who can offer a refill before the drinker even knows he wants one. As you can see, it's very effective. Probably a little too effective. Which is why Robert wants to modify it, so that future models might even be able to detect when a customer is in need of sobering up, changing the order appropriately. Welcome to Experimental, the science show where girls strut, gherkins smoke, and men fondle underwear. Later on, we'll be walking on eggs, getting exceedingly drunk, and attempting to save a life. But first, the physics of stilettos. Meet Dr. Paul Stevenson, a theoretical physicist at the University of Surrey.
My last paper was on absorbing boundary conditions in dynamical calculations of nuclear collisions and giant resonances.
Pretty impressive stuff, but Dr. Stevenson is also a man who, like many men, has an interest in women. The prettier the better. So when the Institute of Physics wanted a fun equation to amuse the public with the wonders of their subject, it took Dr. Stevenson just a few seconds to come up with this. Believe it or not, these figures are, for women, a scientific guide to the perfect length of their stiletto heels. The most important bit of the equation is the Q number.
Clearly, she's miscalculated her Q number.
So what is a Q number? Well, being physics, a Q number is in fact the product of another, much longer equation. It's based on an index of sociological factors like Y, the number of years you've been wearing stilettos.
I was born in stilettos.
That'll be almost 35 then. L, the cost of the shoes.
£129?
Is that cheap or expensive? T, the time since the style was in fashion.
These are in fashion right now.
I'll take her word for it. And P, the probability the shoe will help you pull.
100%.
Agreed. And finally, there's A, the number of units of alcohol to be consumed whilst wearing them.
This only counts as one.
So that's a total of 9, making a Q factor of 0.08. But what is a Q factor exactly? The maximum length of heels is determined first by physics, predominantly how high you can raise your heel. You can work this out by standing on tiptoes. Then there are the sociological factors, and those are what Dr. Stevenson calls the Q factor. They help determine how close to the physical maximum length you can actually handle. They're things like, how long have you been wearing them? Not long, and you should go for a shorter heel. Then there's the cost. Cost a lot, and you'll probably try harder to wear them, even if they're a bit longer than you can handle. When we asked Dr. Stevenson to do the maths for our model, he calculated that the units of alcohol consumed had reduced the safe heel by a factor of 12, from a maximum of around 15 centimetres to a rather stubby 1.25 centimetres. Which means that the chances of our model getting to the door without an accident are pretty slim. And once again, physics triumphs.
Hello!
In a moment, scientific advice on how to get a good deal with a bra. But first, let the test department lighten your day. The light bulb. Clever, but by no means infallible. But fear not when it pops, because the test department has a replacement you can eat. A pickled gherkin. To turn a gherkin into a light bulb is a highly complex and dangerous procedure, which requires years of expertise.
Yes, and if you haven't got years of expertise, don't do it, because it's electricity we're talking about here, and it can and will kill.
Luckily, we do have years of experience and know how to beef up the terminals of our lamp with some nails, and how to mount the green thing to best effect. So now it's time to hit the switch. Taking the precaution of donning a gas mask. And it works. But why? A gherkin bulb works a bit like an orange street lamp, the electricity heating up sodium crystals in the pickling fluid, which is why it gives off that characteristic orange light. Luckily, the gherkin bulb is unlikely to be lighting much more than the test department lamps in the near future, as it suffers from one rather large drawback.
Hello!
Coming up on Experimental, this chap will swig 200 millilitres of vodka in the name of science. And the test department will walk on eggs. But first, ever thought men were stupid? Strut around the Belgian town of Leuven as a tourist and you'll probably be struck by its beauty. But if you're a Leuven bloke, you'll probably be distracted by another form of beauty. That's right. Leuven blokes are like blokes right around the world. They see a good-looking woman, and that's all they can think about for the next half an hour. And that's why we're here. You see, at Leuven's Katholieke University Department of Economics, there are two blokes who are more obsessed with women than most. Indeed, they're responsible for those bits of underwear you see draped near the door to their department. Meet Bram van den Berg and Dr. Siegfried de Witt. They're interested in how sexy women affect men's cognitive processes. That's science speak for thinking.
It's known from previous research that the use of sexy women has some influence on the cognitive processes of men.
Well, that's not exactly earth-shattering. It's something that the advertising industry has known for years. If you can't sell a car on its looks, put a looker on it, and it'll drive itself off the forecourt. But how to prove this scientifically? Mr. van den Berg and Dr. de Witt hit upon the idea of using that other male obsession, money. They put out a call for heterosexual men to come to their labs, fondle women's underwear, and make some cash. Amazingly, it took a whole cup of tea for a queue to form outside their door. What these strapping lads had signed up to was the opportunity to split €10 between them.
There are two roles in this game. One role is the proposer, and the proposer has to decide on the split of an amount of money. And there is also the responder, and the responder has two options. He can either accept the proposal, or the responder can also reject the offer. And in that case, none of the parties gets anything.
What the two players have to do is to agree to split the money between them. It could be €1 for one and €9 for the other. But if they can't agree on a split, then they'll both lose the money. Logically, the fair split would be €5 each. But if one person is a more aggressive bargainer, he can usually walk away with more than his fair share. The git. So where do the bras come in? Well, amazingly, give a man a bra to fondle before he tries to strike a bargain, and all of a sudden, he'll accept any old deal.
When you have been exposed to a sex cue, you become more likely to accept an unfair offer. So, whereas a fair offer would, for example, be a 50-50 split, a man who was exposed to a bra, for example, he would be more likely to accept an unfair split, like €2 for myself and €8 for the other one.
What's even more interesting is that aggressive men with higher testosterone levels are much more affected by sex cues than their more meek brothers. But it seems it's not just the fact that it's a woman that's turning these butch men into pliable wimps. When the respondents were shown pictures of older women, or women in non-provocative dresses, their bargaining powers were simply not affected.
At the contrary, the high testosterone men were very hard bargainers, so they don't lose their minds and they are not affected. In fact, they want to show how tough they are, apparently. It's only when the woman is dressed in a very sexy way, like you see all the time, like Bram just said on the streets, then this change, this shift occurs.
So it seems that for all our bullish, brutish posturing, when it comes to bargaining, we men can be shot down by the simplest of cues.
It's a quite pessimistic view on man, what we have been able to show. It's like you show them 15 pictures of sexy women. It's not nude women at all. So it's not that they're around. It's not during the bargaining game. It's only after exposures. The preference of these men has changed. So they become more likely to accept unfair offers. And it's quite bizarre that men are influenced by such a subtle environmental cue.
I don't know. Is it really that bizarre to stop thinking about money and just go ahead and buy this woman a drink? To pay for her dinner, a taxi home, that new dress, the overdue gas bill? In a moment, we prove hopscotch and alcohol don't mix. But first, to the test department, to attempt the impossible. There's a bit of a discussion going on in the test department. One of our testers is determined to prove that a human can stand on eggs without breaking them. His colleagues are not convinced, especially when preliminary trials end in spectacular failure. Undaunted, he's persuaded the lightest and most delicate of his fellow testers to participate in a real-life experiment. He insists that, in theory, the 2 planks will spread the load. But unfortunately, the only thing being spread here is egg. All over the table. In theory, an egg works in exactly the same way as a dome, with all the force being sent downwards through the line of the roof. This makes it one of the strongest shapes in nature, but can it hold a human? What is needed is more load dispersal and a little less movement. Armed with a new refined quadruple width Eggplank 3000, in other words, an old piece of board he found round the back, our indomitable tester has dared the dainty-footed one once more to risk life and limb in the pursuit of scientific knowledge. Proof at last that it is possible to stand on eggs. Well, almost. After all, you can't make an omelette without breaking an egg. Why should science be any different? Still to come on Experimental, can we use the appliance of science to save this man from a near certain death? Well, not before we've had a stiff drink, we can't. It's Saturday night in Bristol. That can mean only one thing. Yep, it's time to continue Britain's love affair with alcohol.
Well, I like drinking alcohol because it's a good way to relax at the end of the day. It gets rid of your stresses. It's a place to meet with your mates. You always meet at the pub.
So people become more chatty when they've had a couple of beers.
Yeah, get rid of your inhibitions. Always just be yourself a bit more, I think.
Yes, a good drink does all these things, but it also makes you aggressive, makes you sick, not to mention what this bunch will feel like tomorrow morning. And that's why Experimental has turned up. We're off to the University of Bristol to meet Professor Nutt, a psychopharmacologist at Bristol University who wants to replace alcohol with less harmful drugs.
I reckon probably about 1 person a day in the UK, probably 300 to 400 a year, die of alcohol poisoning. And then it's many thousands die of or get brain damage as a consequence of having road traffic accidents when they're drunk. A large number of people get raped, probably the order of 3 or 4 a day as a consequence of being drunk. And then the damage through fights and violence and knifings, it's probably the order of 5 to 10 a day. So there's a huge social cost of being drunk. So alcohol is a drug which could not be licensed today. If it was invented today, it would be banned without any doubt.
There's some evidence that alcohol actually originated in Neolithic times, when sore heads were a fact of life. Given the fact that the modern freezer was a few thousand years away, booze was a pretty good way of preserving some of the goodness in fruit and berries way beyond their season. And let's face it, with life expectancies of less than 30 years, cirrhosis of the liver was not something ancient man was worried about. Nowadays, things are different. We can see the damage it does every day, which is why Professor Nutt wants to find an alternative.
And I thought, well, we could potentially find drugs which could mimic the effects of alcohol, which would inevitably be safer than alcohol because they're drugs and not a toxin like alcohol. They wouldn't cause the same damage to the peripheral organs.
That's right, if David Nutt gets his way, then it's goodbye to the pint and the cocktail, and hello to the little pill. To simulate the effects of alcohol, any drug would have to work by boosting the effects of the brain's neurotransmitters. Initially, alcohol affects the higher thinking centres of the brain, which is why we lose our social inhibitions and begin to think we're brilliant. Sadly, alcohol soon starts inhibiting our ability to think clearly, before going on to inhibit the workings of other areas of the brain, affecting our balance and muscle coordination.
Talking about benzodiazepine-like drugs, because we know that those have many of the effects of alcohol. And because it's a receptor, and we have drugs which bind to the receptor and increase the effects of the natural transmitter GABA in the brain, and they do mimic many of the effects of alcohol, we could probably get to a situation where you could have an intoxicant that was safe and also reversible.
So what we're talking about here is the opportunity to get drunk safely, then sober up in a matter of moments. This sounds too good to be true, so we recruited 2 drinkers to find out. Dem here is going to hit the vodka, a less than healthy 200 ml of the stuff, mixed with orange juice. While Simon gets a cocktail of a rather different sort, provided by Professor Nutt.
Cheers.
If Professor Nutt's got his mix right, the effects of his chewy little pills will be much the same as the real tasty stuff in the glass. To find out, Experimental has set up a number of simple dexterity tasks. Easy sober, but kinda hard to do once the booze has kicked in. So, let's see if the alcohol has entered the bloodstream. 1.65, that's twice the UK legal limit for driving, which is why we'll play hopscotch. So, we can say that 200 ml of vodka is detrimental to the game. But what about 2 little pills? Not too bad. Oh, spoke too soon. Now how about darts? That's the drinking man's game. Whoa, and double naught scored there. And finally, the policeman's old favourite, walking down the white line. First, Dem the boozer. And now, Simon the pill popper. Steady as a drunk. But how does he feel?
At the moment I'm feeling some of the more physical effects as if I was drunk. I'm feeling a bit lightheaded and legs not quite as under control as usual, but not really getting so much of the psychological effects, like getting chatty or feeling more relaxed.
And that's the problem for Professor Nutt's chewy little alcohol substitute. Most people drink for the chatty bit, not for the falling over bit.
Now, it's not identical, and there are some aspects of alcohol, particularly the initial energizing effects. When people begin to get drunk, they often become a bit activated, and that isn't mimicked by that benzodiazepine. Until we can mimic alcohol completely, we won't know whether this is a viable alternative. I do accept that.
But there is one massive advantage to Professor Nutt's pills. They have an antidote. Dem's blood alcohol level will not return to normal for about 8 hours. But Simon here will be as sober as a judge within seconds. To prove it, let's see what happens when he plays darts once more.
Aim for 3 treble 20s for me, please.
180! Almost. Finally, it's experimental to the rescue. Roofing tiles, fishing line, and the lid of a styrofoam beer cooler. What do these 3 things have in common? Well, they might just save a life, because stick them all together and you've got the water kite. It's the rather unlikely invention of Trevor Miller, keen angler and water sports enthusiast, who wasn't having much luck one day trying to catch a fish because his bobber wouldn't stay put.
The moment of inspiration for the water kite came when I was fishing in a river, casting my line out and watching the fishing bobber float downstream. I came up with an idea to keep the fishing bobber out in the current by fixing sort of like an upside-down sail to the bottom of the fishing bobber.
Once he had his bobber working, Trevor started to think bigger.
I basically went into my father's barn and took a look at what I had around, a styrofoam cooler lid, a roofing shingle, and some fishing twine, realizing that I've come up with an idea that might someday save people's lives.
The usual way to rescue a victim from a raging river is to try and throw him a rope. But to do that, you have to time your throw just right to land the rope in front of the victim as he floats past. The water kite overcomes this difficulty by taking timing out of the equation. Once the water kite is in position, it can be held there until the victim reaches it.
The water kite is able to float upstream by working off the principle of lift in much the same way that a kite flies against the wind.
Kites fly by exploiting Newton's third law.
For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. At least, that's roughly it.
Hold a kite flat, and there's no lift. But tilt it, and the air hits the underside of the kite.
Aye, that's the action bit.
And it goes up.
Oh, that's the reaction bit.
This angle of attack, as it's called, is the key element in the way aeroplanes fly. Their wings, angled to the oncoming air, generate a lift. Up to a point, increasing the angle of attack increases the lift.
Aye, but only up to a point.
What Trevor's water kite does is use the same principles. Now it's the water pushing on the angled fin that makes the water kite rise upstream, just like a real kite would rise into the air. By pulling the two ropes attached to the kite, you can change its angle of attack. And you can make the water kite float, as if flying upstream, maintaining its position until the hapless victim floats by. It's only a prototype, but in the future, Trevor hopes that his water kite will be standard issue in search and rescue teams, and even the military. Experimental was so impressed by what Trevor thought to do with his water cooler, string and roofing shingle that we asked some other inventors what they'd come up with, but the results were not quite so promising.
If you know what you're doing, you could kill someone with these things.
Materials to build a house?
A mice yacht device.
It's my treehouse when I was a little kid.
The hideous jewelry my ex-boyfriend used to buy for me. And that's why he's my ex-boyfriend.
Welcome to Experimental, the science show that makes budgies glow, walks on water, and gets itself arrested. Later on, we'll be finding out why this man has spent his life trying to record a duck's echo.
That's complete twaddle.
Recreating one of the greatest moments in science history,
Mary had a little lamb.
And having a drink with this couple in Boston and Taiwan. But first, let's fluoresce. Experimental is in Brisbane, Australia, in search of budgies that glow, and the scientist who's trying to find out why by smearing them in sunblock. But first, we're off to the disco. The ultraviolet lights are blazing, and anyone who really wants to get noticed strutting their stuff has washed their clothes in biological washing powder. Under UV light, they're blinding. Of course, it doesn't necessarily make you any more attractive. It's so much easier being a budgie. They don't even have to dance to find a mate. They just sit there and glow.
All right, can you get that one, Tom?
Neurobiologist Justin Marshall of the University of Queensland has discovered that budgies use the natural fluorescence of their feathers to find a mate. And now he's caught some, he's going to prove it by smearing one with sunblock. Fluorescence appears when a material absorbs ultraviolet light and emits visible light. Detergent manufacturers use the trick to make clothes look brilliantly clean. They add fluorescent brightness to soap powder that absorbs UV light and emits blue light, making old, yellowing clothes shine again. In the disco, under intense UV lights, those clothes glow extremely brightly. Luckily for budgies, they don't have to wash their clothes to get noticed. Birds are remarkably well equipped to see fluorescence under normal conditions. Their eyes are sensitive to ultraviolet. They have a much wider visual range than humans, and they can see colours around them that we can't even imagine. The fluorescence of their feathers is only visible to us under special ultraviolet lights, but to budgies, it's visible all the time. Scientists have known for some time that budgies fluoresce, but they didn't know why.
The real clue as to what the fluorescence in the bird was for came from looking at where the fluorescence was on the bird. And we noticed that the fluorescent feathers were in parts that the birds were showing to each other.
If the birds were displaying to each other, then the chances were it had something to do with sex and mate selection.
Animals that fluoresce are slightly unusual in that there are many animals that are colourful. Fluorescent animals want to be extra colourful and extra gorgeous, if you like, towards their mates. So fluorescence, we believe, is something to do with sexual communication.
Experiment time, then. Is a glowing budgie more attractive to the opposite sex? Take one female budgie willing to be impressed by a couple of pretty boys. She is placed in a choice chamber, a highly desirable bachelor girl pad equipped with transparent walls through which she can ogle the guys. Take two near-identical male budgies, each with fluorescent yellow plumage on their cheeks and crowns. One male is left as he is, the other is smeared with sunblock so that the female can't see him glow.
Putting sunblock on the budgies is no problem. They preen it off within a couple of days, and in fact we have to replace it all the time. So it doesn't harm the birds at all. All it does is to dampen out that fluorescence in the feathers.
If fluorescence is important, then the female budgie should prefer to sit opposite the brightest male, rather than hang out with the sunblock bird. And she does.
Budgies choose fluorescing partners much more frequently, significantly more frequently than non-fluorescing partners. And this indicates that it is something to do with sexual communication.
Hang on a second, though. Maybe it's got nothing to do with sex. Maybe budgies just like hanging out with other bright birds.
Females didn't really care whether their next-door neighbour females were fluorescent or not, and males didn't really care about other males fluorescing or not. They only really cared when it was the opposite sex. So males had to have fluorescent females to sit with, and females had to have fluorescent males to sit with.
So why does being brighter make you a better mate?
Fluorescence might be quite hard to do. It may be quite a hard signal to make. So it indicates that the bird is trying hard and being successful in life. So if you're a bright fluorescent bird, you're successful, you're getting a lot of food, you're a worthy mate.
Here's a warning. A glowing budgie is a strong, virile, attractive budgie that's irresistible to the opposite sex. The same doesn't necessarily apply to humans. In a moment on Experimental, we'll be arrested using the latest technology. But before we go behind bars, let's walk on water with the test department. James and Anu are having one of those days in the test department. They've got the white coats, but they've got nothing to test. Which is why they're desperately looking through scientific papers for some inspiration. Things are not looking good until suddenly James finds a real gem. A Leonardo da Vinci drawing of shoes that enable man to walk on water. I say, what a great idea. But can this be done? There's only one way to find out. Head to the pool and don some shoes. Predictable. What we need is shoes that exploit the Archimedes principle.
Ah, that's the one they name after me. It say to James he can walk on the water if he can find a way to make himself weigh less than the water he gonna push out of the bath.
Given that James weighs 72 kilos, he's going to need a pair of shoes that will displace more than 72 kilos of water. Let's see how these do. Splashy, but not quite big enough. Now we're talking. How about these? Fantastic. But perhaps this experiment explains why Leonardo's walking on water idea never really caught on. Coming up on Experimental, we risk our fingers in an attempt to track down that rarest of things, a duck's echo. We'll be drinking from the cup of love and visiting the test department's recording studio. But before we do all that, let's go in search of a gadget that James Bond would have killed for. Every now and again, the test department takes things a little too far, like blowing up balloons, or attempting to smell the armpits of Chinese women. But on a recent trip to Dorset in the southeast of England, things got a bit out of hand. It all started when their latest blind driving experiment went wrong in a fairly spectacular way. One siren and a policeman later, science lost two great minds to the long arm of the law.
Right, well, I've had a report of somebody acting very suspicious here. And what I'm going to need to do is to fill out a form to search your car.
Still mustn't grumble. As a result, Experimental stumbled on a pretty nifty piece of kit. A pen, straight out of James Bond. This revved up biro not only writes on the paper, but at almost the same time, it's uploading Mr. Plod's squiggles to the main computer back at the station. So, as the cuffs snap shut on our two former test department demonstrators, their charge sheet is already being prepared down at the Plod shop. It's the brainchild of Petter Eriksson.
What we're aiming for really here is an extension of that technology. We want to keep all that's good about pen and paper and just make it a little bit better in the sense that it also captures what you're writing, drawing, and moves it into the digital world.
It works like this. Next to an ordinary nib, there is a tiny digital camera, capable of capturing over 100 frames per second. But the camera is not interested in the Plod squiggles. It's filming tiny dots on the paper and working out where the nib is in relation to them. It's that data that's sent to a microprocessor, then transmitted back to the station, where another computer takes the data and, using the dots, not only recreates the plod squiggle, but manages to put that information onto the correct form. As a result, there is no time wasted in getting our test department testers locked up where they belong. This gizmo isn't only helping out the law, it can also be used as an instant translation device. Simply write in your own language, Swedish Petter, being cocky, chooses English, and then, with a simple tap, it will transmit the data to your mobile phone, which will then read out what you've written in the language of your choice, German or now Japanese. You can also be all romantic, sending love squiggles to your lover's mobile, anywhere in the world. All that wonderful technology our hapless testers will never get to play with.
Don't try this at home.
In a moment, we search out the mystery of a duck's echo and go drinking around the world. But first, let's make history with the test department. They're into self-sufficiency in the test department. They might have access to some pretty sexy hi-fi, but when it comes to recording music, they like to do it themselves. What Horace and Heidi are wondering is, can they make a talking machine, the original recording device, out of some old drain pipe and a bit of aluminium foil? Of course they can. They've got white coats. All they have to do is bodge the pipe so it can rotate on this spool thing. Cover it with silver foil, attach a needle to a speaker cone affair, and prepare to shout into it. And because we have a sense of history, they're going to say the same words uttered by Thomas Edison when he invented what he called the phonograph.
Mary had a little lamb. Her fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, her lamb was sure to go.
This primitive phonograph works because sound, including nursery rhymes, vibrate as they travel through the air. When the rhyme hits the speaker, it vibrates, vibrating the needle and scratching a ziggy line on the tin foil. You reset the whole thing, the needle vibrates in the groove, babbling the speaker, and you hear pretty much what you've just recorded. So let's listen back.
Mary had a little lamb, her fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary
Speech, but not exactly high fidelity.
had a little lamb, her fleece was white as snow.
Still to come on experimental internet drinking, so much better than the chat room, and the test department's attempt to make rubber eggs.
Hello.
But first, our sound recordist, Bruce, has a strange obsession with ducks. It's not their swimming or waddling that he likes. No, being a sound recordist, it's their quacks that get him going. Or rather, it's trying to record a duck's echo.
Yeah, I've been hunting the duck for quite some time now, and I still can't find the echo of the duck. It doesn't exist, I'm sure.
Now, this may be news for you, but Bruce is not alone. It's a commonly held belief that a duck's quack does not echo. Don't believe us? Well, let's ask a few farming types.
The duck's call is the only one that doesn't echo.
No, I don't think you can hear a duck's echo.
A duck's quack definitely doesn't echo.
Well, those testimonials might do for some people, but not for experimental. So we headed to the labs of Trevor Cox, Professor of Acoustics at the University of Salford, to ask him his opinion about non-echoing ducks.
That's complete twaddle.
Twaddle it might be, but his department was aware of the claims.
We only became aware of when we got contacted by people asking us, was this true or was it not true? And of course, when people contacted, we said, of course the quack will echo, go away.
However, just because Professor Cox thought that the duck echo claims were twaddle, science can only back him up if there is true experimental evidence to prove it. So we headed off to a local farm to procure him a duck. They didn't have a duck dog, so they lent us their sheepdog, which was next to useless. But Trevor did eventually get his quacker, and we could get down to the serious business of examining its echo. But first, what do you need for an echo? Number one, a good sound source. Bagpipes should do it, then a good hard surface at least 17 metres away, like those cliffs. The melodious sound from the bagpipes leaves our player at approximately 1,225 kilometres per hour. Oh, lovely. It then hits the cliff and bounces back to the player approximately 0.1 of a second later, reducing their melody to a total cacophony. To examine the duck echo, or lack of it, we're first going to record it in an anechoic chamber, a room full of super soft cones, which means there is no chance of an echo. See? We'll then cross-reference this with recordings taken in here.
This is a reverberation room where sound echoes around as sound echoes in a cathedral. If a duck's quack's going to echo, it's going to echo in here.
So, let's start with our reference quack.
Come on, Daisy, quack. Come on.
Well done, Daisy. Now, for a truly epoch-making moment. Proof, or otherwise, that ducks' quacks echo. Silence, please.
Come on, Daisy. Out you come. Out you come.
Oh.
Out you come.
Sadly, it took some time before Daisy was prepared to reveal all to science. And who can blame her? This one has been keeping us humans guessing for centuries. But, with a stiff drink for fortitude, she was finally ready to quack. So, do our ears deceive us? Was that an echo or not?
Well, you can see here, this is what the waveforms looks like for a duck in an environment with no reflections, an anechoic chamber. And here's what it sounds like. So it sounds a bit like a duck. I suppose it's not very surprising. And these are the results if we take it into a big room, the reverberation chamber, where everything echoes around. You can clearly hear all the echoes happening. So this is pretty strong evidence that a duck's quack does indeed echo, if you're in the right conditions.
So why then did the myth about the non-echoability of a duck's quack arise? Here, sadly, we're back on speculative grounds.
Well, there's a few sort of ideas, one of which is that when you hear a duck quack, it kind of sometimes goes quack, quack, quack. So maybe the repeated quacking of a duck kind of masks the sound of the echoes coming in. The other possibility is ducks don't tend to be near large surfaces, which can give you reflections. You don't tend to go and hear ducks near large cliffs, which is, if you think about the conditions where you hear echoes, it's up on mountainsides near big cliffs, or it's in urban streets where you've got very large walls, and you don't tend to meet ducks in those conditions. So it might just be there's no reflecting surfaces around where people are normally listening to ducks.
So Bruce's long search to record the echo that isn't there looks like it's over.
It's a dead duck as far as I'm concerned.
Still to come on Experimental, how high-tech lonely hearts get together. But before that, let's head to the test department for some eggs. There's only so many interesting things you can do with eggs once you've poached them, fried them, boiled them, and scrambled them. Your options are, well, limited. But fear not. The test department has an extraordinary experiment that will leave you eggs. Do I really have to read this?
Get on with it.
Right, anyway, here's how to get an egg in a bottle without breaking it. I said without breaking it. First, take a bowl of eggs, and to check that they're not cooked, break one onto a suitable surface. Next, pour a bottle of vinegar into a bowl, and then put an egg into it. That should do it. Now all you have to do is wait around 48 hours whilst the vinegar does its magic. The acid in the vinegar soon dissolves the shell, which is made mainly of calcium carbonate. What's left is the membrane that surrounds the white and yolk, which makes the egg feel more like a rubber ball. But just how rubbery is it? Now for the fun bit. Light a couple of matches and chuck them in a bottle. Then sit the naked egg on the neck, and as if by magic, once the match has burnt, the pressure inside the bottle drops and the egg is pushed into the bottle. Bingo! There you have it. An egg in a bottle. Now for the burning question. What do you do with an egg in a bottle? Well, to prove it wasn't cooked, you smash it up, pour it into a pan, and eat it, of course. And finally, drinking with a difference. Spring on the campus of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And suddenly, all the students are putting down their books and rediscovering their bodies, or more correctly, someone else's body. Yes, love is in the air once more. But there's always the hapless foreign student drinking alone, far away from his loved one. Or is he? Well, no. This is Jackie Lee, and he's on a high-tech date of his own making. And he's not drinking alone. Thousands of miles away in Taiwan, his girlfriend, Han, is staring lovingly into her glass as they drink in virtual reality land. Jackie is a student at the MIT's Media Labs, where they think of kinky new ways to make the mundane interesting.
So, the Lover's Cup, they are like interface for drinking as a new communication. We don't have to call or email somebody. We can have more impressive ways, like using cups as a communication interface.
This humble little glass could be the mobile phone of the future. It's embedded with sensors and has a radio transmitter in its base. Like all lovers, it comes in pairs. And once the two cups set up a relationship, they're capable of interacting with each other right across the world. If you're in Cambridge, Massachusetts, but your lover's in Taiwan, you can still drink together. She takes a drink, and your glass lights up. Your lips touch the rim of your glass, and thousands of miles away, her glass glows with your caress. Shake your cup, and hers vibrates, which perhaps might lead her to think of other things. The lights and sensors have been around for years. What's new is the fact that the cups are connected to the wireless internet, each with their own individual IP address, which means that signals can bounce across space and find their partner wherever they are in the world. There's only one thing that Jackie has left out, perhaps deliberately. There's nothing to indicate how drunk you're getting. So as you pass out, your lover can sip her lemonade in blissful ignorance.